What is up, my beautiful people? Hope you're all having a marvelous day. Exile 451 here with yet another daily dose of Reddit Happy. Got a special treat for you guys today, another Humans of Reddit interview. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. Alright, so I got in touch with another Redditor who has a YouTube channel called Happy Living. And over the course of several messages back and forth, we decided to set up this Skype interview to talk about his struggle with suicidal depression and how he's gotten over it. So, like with the escort interview, I'm just going to politely ask that you deal with the fact that this is Skype audio and not the greatest quality, but I promise you the content is well worth listening to. With that having been said, let's get to the interview. What was your life like growing up? Would you say that you had a good childhood, or were there issues that may have led to your depression?
Well, I would say I have, in my point of view, I had a blessed childhood. My parents are super nice. None of it could evidently seem from the outside like it caused the depression. I think it's something that a lot of people can experience, whether they were born with a lot of outside hardships or not. I think that is not only the case for me, but for a lot of people. It can come because often, well, high school events, some childhood traumas, not necessarily related to the family, perhaps outside situations. And if we don't know how to deal with those challenges well, then depression can occur.
So, there wasn't any bullying or anything else, you just grew up rather normal?
Well, I think everyone experiences some bullying. There were events that I could say led to several bouts, but it wasn't like I was constantly being bullied. I think everyone experiences some bullying though, or most people.
How long did it take you to overcome your depression?
Well, it depends on the perspective. The first time I experienced it, I was 13. I would say it lasted about a year and a half. At the time, I didn't even know what depression was. So only reflecting back, I could say that was the case. But I was really suffering. I had suicidal thoughts. That all year and a half was kind of a blur for me, but I didn't even know how to call it. Then, it kind of came on and off. The last time and the hardest time was 3 years ago, and it lasted, well, you can't really point a finger to when it ends, but I would say that about 8 months, I would say, where that was the time when I really took action to take care of myself and make sure it doesn't come back.
How would you describe the feelings that it brought?
Wow. Well, it can feel, and the mind will tell you that it's like the end of the world, or you have no reason. For me, it was like you have no way to be happy again. It's very strong negative emotions that the image in my mind was always like I'm in some dark pit or I'm stuck. Like if you can imagine that image, or the image of a dark cloud just always behind me. To me, it felt like I would never be happy again every time it came. That was a big fear of mine.
What were some of the things that you'd tell yourself during this time? Like, what were some of the negative thoughts that would intrude on you?
That's one point I want to make, is that these thoughts, not necessarily, I would say, I told myself them. These are a lot of learned thoughts. It's the voices of negative opinions we heard throughout growing up. And it's not really ours, because if they were my thoughts, then when I was depressed, I could have just snapped my finger and stopped them. But I realized that wasn't the case. It's just thoughts constantly appear in the mind. And for me, a lot of times I believed them or I identified with them. I believed I was thinking these thoughts, and I would have thoughts about how I'm, I'll be blatant like that. I say I'm a piece of shit. I'm a bad person, thinking that I deserve to die. Also, sometimes it would just be thoughts of like fears that I will never be happy again. There's no point in continuing to live. I would often fantasize about dying in a way that I thought that would be the only way to end my emotional pain. That's the only reason I fantasized it. I didn't want to die. And thank God I didn't take any action, but it got to a point where the emotional pain was so much and I couldn't deal with the emotions and with these thoughts that I started fantasizing about just ending it.
How did you cope with all of this? If it's not too personal, did you ever turn to any sort of substance abuse during this time to just numb out and not have to listen?
Never, no. For me, it was, I always knew, even when I was depressed, that the most important thing in your life is to take care of yourself, of your well-being, make sure you are happy. The thing is, when I was depressed, is I just did not know how. So I started looking at how, and that's how I recovered. First thing I did is I told my parents, I'm unhappy, please help me. Can you get me a therapist? And that's the first thing I did to take care of myself. And I still see that therapist just because I love him so much, and he still helps me with things. I used to see him once or twice a week. I was very afraid that without him, I would end my life. And he was really helpful. And with him, the coping I did, what is called, he taught me it's called mindfulness and meditation practices, which means mindfulness means being in the present moment for as much as you can. So when you're depressed or generally during your day, we experience so many thoughts. I think it's about tens of thousands of thoughts each day. And I read that about 85% of them are the same thoughts. So there's not really that much thinking to do. And with mindfulness, you start learning to put your attention on your surroundings, on what you're actually doing in the present moment. Look at the sky when you walk outside, enjoying the walk, noticing your breath. And when you notice your breath, it gets deeper and has a calming effect. So what it slowly did is I started taking attention away from my mind and from these negative thoughts and more into just being present. And when you think about it, somebody is depressed, you probably imagine in your head that he constantly has negative thoughts. And if you see someone that is depressed, you can usually notice it because he looks so unhappy. You can see it in his face. And that's because his mind is constantly thinking negative thoughts. So when you start putting your attention on other things, you naturally feel lighter. In fact, it's daily practice that I recommend for everyone. I'm not depressed, but I still do it because also I want to experience more of my life and not more of my thoughts, which, like I said, 85% of them are the same each day.
You mentioned thoughts of suicide. Did you ever resort to self-harm or attempt it?
No, I considered a lot of times. I didn't consider self-harm. I didn't see the point in that, but I considered ending my life a lot of times. The closest one was me. We had a balcony where we lived back then. Is just me being kind of tempted to get close to it and perhaps take the jump, but I was so afraid that when I got close, I started crying and just ran back. But I always had the fear that I would actually end my life just because of, you know, the emotion getting stronger and me losing control and taking that action, which I can't say that I will regret it because I won't be there, but it would be something that I don't want to do. So it was constant fear each day because it's kind of like I had a part of me fantasizing about death. Like I constantly imagined perhaps just running in front of a car, other things of that sort. And one part of me trying to stay sane and not fantasize about it. It was a conflict. Thankfully, that other part kept me here.
You mentioned that you talked to your friends about needing a therapist. So obviously, it sounds like some of them were supportive. Did you lose anyone close to you because of your depression?
I don't know if I lost anyone. No, they were. Well, I told them that. The thing is, I told them that, but later I would kind of play Mr. Happy. I would played that character like I'm fine, and no one really knew the depth of how much I was suffering. So I kind of later played it off like it was no big deal, although it was. I felt kind of embarrassed about it. So to them, I think maybe they could tell a bit, but most of the time they didn't really know when it started and when it ended. From my point of view, I think they didn't. The only one who knew was perhaps my girlfriend, perhaps my parents. I didn't lose any friends. Sometimes people would want to talk to me less, perhaps, because before the depression, I would kind of play perhaps the character of like Mr. Cool Guy, and I didn't really feel like it. I did play Mr. Happy. I didn't want to, I was embarrassed of feeling negative at the time. I was embarrassed of my own depression, but perhaps some people wanted to hang out with me less because I seemed less confident, but they were not people who I would say are my closest of friends.
Did you ever lose hope of getting through this?
Uh, it was fluctuating, you know. Sometimes a big part of me was really afraid that I won't get over it. And a small, tiny glimpse of light was there, of hope. What kept me hoping that I will get through this? First of all, most of me believe that I won't. When you're in such a state, it's really hard to see that it's possible to get out of it because you're in it. It's like maybe a fish can't really imagine himself getting out of sea, that he doesn't even know he's at sea. That's the best analogy I could come up with, but the idea is that when you're in it, it seems kind of impossible to get out because you're in it. From the outside, maybe when you look at someone depressed, it's easy to say, okay, he just needs to work out more, meditate, go to therapy. It's not like that from the first person point of view. But what kept me going, although big part of me had no hope, is that memory. I had these memories of me being happy from years before when I was young. I had these memories that I was happy, and it kept me going because the logic was, well, if I was happy then it means I wasn't born depressed. I wasn't born with depression. No one is, in fact. It's something we learn, we pick up. So when I realized that I had that potential to be happy again. And that's what kept me motivated to rediscover that potential.
What finally made you take active steps to improve yourself? Was there some sort of catalyst, or was it just a gradual realization you needed to?
The catalyst was suffering so bad that it was either ending it all or figuring out how to be happy. That was the catalyst. I was suffering so bad it forced me to find a way because I could not bear it. I really couldn't. It's like, well, I read a book and I really sympathize with its name. It's called Love Yourself or Die Trying, something like that. And it's a familiar story to mine, I feel. Well, that book is a bestseller. But that guy who wrote it also felt the same way. He told himself, if I'm not going to figure out how to love myself, which correlates with being happy, I think he said in a month or 2 months, then he will kill himself. And that's why he wrote this book. And thankfully he discovered how to love himself and wrote it. And that's how I felt. I felt if it's either figure out how to be happy or die trying.
What was the first thing you did to start getting your depression under control?
I'd say it's two things at the same time. It was going to therapy and actively searching myself through a Google search. I Googled how to be happy, books about being happy, looking for books that will give me tools to discover that because clearly I didn't know how. And these two together, I still read a lot of these books because they're so valuable. They teach you a lot of tools you can use when you face these challenges. If I had these tools before, then depression wouldn't happen. That's that's why I made my channel, because I want to share them. There's plenty of ways of places to check them out, other wonderful channels. You can check out books on Amazon. And they're super valuable because we're not taught those things at school. We're not taught how to deal with negative thoughts and emotions. We kind of are left to figure that out, and most people don't know how.
What was the hardest thing to overcome during the whole process?
The hardest thing was, I say two things. One was I started feeling really angry about everything, and I had no idea why. If someone would make a mistake, I would feel furious. So one thing was making peace with that anger. It was first making peace that anger is there. I try to push it away. That doesn't work. So making peace with that anger, and generally making peace with the fact that I'm depressed, because that's one step out of depression, actually. Not saying, oh, I'm gonna be depressed forever. Not saying I hate depression, but saying it's called the middle way. But saying, okay, right now and in the past few months, I feel depressed. Just how I feel, I accept it, and I will take action. No need for other unnecessary drama. And the second thing was the fear that I will lose control. Was a big fear that I will lose control and kill myself, like I told you before. It was really panicked me all day. I had thoughts, I had imaginations of me going crazy and losing control, killing myself. And then I'll have another part that's trying to push these thoughts off at the same time. So it's the same thing, is accepting that fear, accepting these thoughts was actually a step forward instead of fighting them.
What does it feel like to be on the other side now, having come through it? How would you describe life with the issue under control?
Much lighter, I would say. It's much lighter to live without the heavy burden of depression. I still work on myself a lot to let go of a lot of other heavy burdens that I've carried through the years. Because since the day we are born, we are told what to do, and it's not good and bad. But we're told what to do, what we're supposed to do, what we're not supposed to do, what's good and bad, and what are we. And we carry, many people don't know, but we carry those negative events in our subconscious mind, and they affect us day to day. If we don't check them out, if we don't take the time to see what beliefs, what drives our actions, what drives our fears, then we're not going to let go of these beliefs and truly live our lives. So I would say getting out of depression is just releasing a few very hard beliefs, and then you're out of depression, but you still have work to do on all those other negative beliefs that are bringing you down. So from the other side, I would say just it's much lighter, feels much lighter, and there's also wanting to help other people to experience that lightness, I would say.
What are you doing with your life right now? How has it improved?
Well, I'm learning to be a meditation instructor because that was one of the biggest tools that helped me overcome depression. And generally, I'm learning tools to help others and myself more. The more I help myself, the more I can help others. And I have my YouTube channel. My goal with all of that is really to help more and more people be happier, and that creates like a butterfly effect. The more I help people overcome their depression, overcome their hardships, and help myself do it, then that positivity spreads. There's a saying that you affect one person, you affect 1,000, and each of these thousands affected can affect more. So the goal is to help more people live life, and myself live life as they want to, proudly, confidently, happily, calmly, because we deserve to. We've been born into this life and we deserve to enjoy it. So it's important for me to do.
Do you have any advice for anyone who's dealing with depression right now?
Yeah. First thing I would say is not to resist the emotions and your current state. I know it sounds contradictory, but when you fight depression, when you fight fire with fire, it only makes it stronger. So making peace with how things are is actually a step forward. That's not making peace saying, oh, I'm going to be depressed forever. Making peace and saying, right now, I feel unhappy. Right now, I don't have the tools to get out of depression, or I'm still developing the tools. That's a step forward, because now you're more focused on, instead of fighting depression in like a war, trying to make it disappear, you're focused on, okay, what can I do to improve my life situation? What can I do to improve the point of view of which I'm viewing things? What action can I take? And the second thing that correlates with that is things you can take is one, finding a therapist that you connect to and that you genuinely feel is helpful, because I know some are not helpful from my own experience. So make sure you feel he's helpful, it's someone you trust, and if you so, stay with him. That's one advice. And the second is also teach yourself how to take care of yourself. And one way to do it is check out some books online that you may find interesting. And I'm talking about self-growth books, perhaps spiritual books, books that will teach you tools to deal with depression, to deal with your thoughts, to deal with your emotions in a peaceful manner and transform them. And that was what helped me the most. I would say 100%. I learned these tools and I use them and I still use them, and I'm still learning new tools. So these are two things.
That actually ties in really well with my next question. You mentioned some books earlier on. Could you just talk about those ones you mentioned earlier again a little bit, and then any other resources or books or anything that you found helpful in overcoming depression?
Yes, I want to recommend 5. Okay, let's go with 5. There's so many. I have a huge library, but I picked 5 that could be the most helpful. One is a website and a correlating book. The website is called Pathway to Happiness. Perhaps you can link it in the description. And he has the maker of the website also has a book called Mindworks, which teaches you how to closely examine emotional reactions you have during your day, closely examine your thoughts, and write about them in third person, and also to look at your thoughts like different characters in your head talking. And when you start dissecting things like that, things start to not make sense. In fact, I started personal coaching with the author of this book because I think his work is phenomenal, and his website has a lot of free articles, free podcasts that can help you. He talks a lot about thoughts, dealing with emotions, changing them. What is actually happiness? He has some nice insights on that. What causes depression? That's one resource. Another resource I would say is the book The Joy of Living. It's by a Buddhist monk called Mingyur Rinpoche. And what I love about this book, and it really resonated with me when I was depressed, is that this Buddhist monk, who scientists actually examined his brain and found he's one of the happiest people in the world through examining his mind and the hormones he feels, he was diagnosed when he was a young kid with severe anxiety issues and depression, severe like panic attacks. Okay, and he was the son of a meditation master in Tibet, but he experienced those panic attacks daily, and he learned how to overcome them. So it really inspired me, because I was like, this is someone who's been through situations like me, and he overcome them. And he talks also a lot about how he overcame them. And another thing I like about the book is, some of you who are not familiar with Buddhism may have some preconceptions that it's something woo-woo or not practical, you know what I mean? But it's actually Buddhism where there's a lot of misconceptions for some reason. It's a very practical practice. It doesn't ask you to believe in any god. There are no gods there. It's not a religion. It's a practice. Meditation came from it, and mindfulness. Science now is finding out how valuable it is. And what I liked about his book is he combines Buddhist philosophy with science, with actual science, with physics theory, studies from neuroscience, from psychology. The book features insight from scientists, and I love that combination of science, Buddhism, and combining them with facts to show you how you can actually transform challenges in your life, challenging emotions, challenging thoughts, into a happy life experience, and how you can deal with them. One book I would say is Peace is Every Step by Thich Nhat Hanh. It's really like a crash course on mindfulness, and it's reading in a very inspiring way. it will just inspire you to enjoy the little things, because that's what counts. It teaches you how to walk peacefully, and that's an art for me. Just walk slowly, enjoy your life, being mindful, which means being present with whatever is going on, which takes you away from these negative thoughts and calms them down. And another book that was super valuable, I would say one of the most, is called The 5 Levels of Attachment. It's by a man called Don Miguel Ruiz Jr. Maybe you know his father wrote a book called The Four Agreements, which is an all-time bestseller. And in the 5 level of attachments, why it helped me out, it has no practices. It's info, but it expands your awareness of things. And it talks about how our mind and how our point of view of life can be perceived in 5 levels of attachment, and he compares it to a football game. So that's how I will do it using his comparison if you watch football. So like, let's say your attachment is level 1 and you're watching the football game. You don't care who's playing. You don't care if it's in a stadium or in your backyard, who's winning. You're just having fun watching the game. At level 2, you maybe care about the stadium. You may choose a team, but you don't really care whatever team wins. You're still enjoying the game. You're just playing a bit. You're choosing a team. Level 3, you are a fan of a team. Now you only like this team, but you still respect other teams. Level 4, you like only your team, and you're gonna hate, or maybe not hate, but judge every other team member, every other fan of other teams. And at level 5, which is called fanaticism in the book, that's the level of terrorism, for example. You will be able to kill someone if he's a fan of the other team. And by the way, this happens a few times in soccer, where a team lost a game and a fan of that team that lost killed fans celebrating for the other team just because of a soccer game. That's level 5 of attachments. And how does it correlate to depression, you may ask? Because now let's take it to other things in our life. How do we treat ourselves? At level 5, we may hate ourselves completely if we don't fit our expectations. If we fail a test at level 5 of fanaticism, we will hate ourselves just because we failed that expectation. At level 4, if we fail the test, we will judge ourselves. We won't love ourselves. At least it won't be self-hate. Level 3 is we failed the test. We are disappointed. It's not the reaction that we wanted. But level 3 is the level of unconditional love. So we still respect ourselves. We still love ourselves. We may feel a bit down, but we recover. Level 4 and 3 is where most people at most places in their life, at most of their thoughts and beliefs. Level 2, we realize that we decided that the test is important. So, okay, it failed. We failed the test, but we decided that it's important. It's okay. At level 1, with this example, I'm not really sure how to correlate it, but I guess you even take it once over, you forget about the result a second after and continue with your life. Perhaps planning, perhaps taking a relative action, learning better next time, but you completely just keep enjoying your life in the present moment. So these are the 5 resources. I still repeat them, especially the first one, Pathway to Happiness. I do the courses there. I'm taking it right now. They have some online courses on dealing with anxiety. They have a self-mastery course, which is how to master your thoughts and emotions, and a relationships course on how to have better thriving relationships, not only romantic ones, but in general, and a few more, I think, about how to release emotions. Not sure, but all of them I found super valuable.
All right, so you have a YouTube channel yourself. Why don't you tell me a little more about it?
Well, my goal with this channel is to help more people learn about practical ways. I want to call it like it's spiritual practices mostly, but I don't like saying the word spiritual because it has some correlation that it's not practical, but it's actually very practical. And I want to share with it practices that can help people exactly with dealing with negative emotions, dealing with negative thoughts, with dealing with depression. My main goal is find a way to spread to more and more teenagers so they know how to deal with it, because I know it would have been super valuable for me to know what I know now and have the tools that I have now. When I was going through teenage years where there's so much judgment, and we all know how it is. It's like a popularity contest and you're trying to prove yourself. And right now my main focus, because that's what's most important for me, is to put out videos about overcoming depression, how to overcome it, how to deal with it, steps that I took, resources that I used and still use. That's what really inspires me to help more people overcome depression. And I can't wait for people to get true results from it.
And what's the name of your channel?
Happy living. I find it fitting because that's why we're here.
Anything else that you'd like to add before we wrap up here?
Yeah, I would like to add, first of all, to thank you, Exile, for the opportunity to talk with you and for the questions you asked. I had a lot of fun. And that no matter how you feel, how bad it feels, you have in you the seed of happiness, and you have in you the seed and potential to be happy. You just need to acquire the right tools, the right practices. Because what happened when you grew up is you acquired the wrong ones, the ones that cause suffering. And now it's time to learn some tools that will help you do the opposite. Don't look at it as something permanent. Don't look at it as something that cannot change. There's a lot of science about something called neuroplasticity, which means the mind can change and evolve, and it's very flexible. You just need to give it new incentives, new points of view, new positive thoughts, and find tools that work for you. Don't just give up. Find things that work for you. Use them to lift yourself out of your situation, out of your suffering, because you can do it. You just need to get the tools. Look at it like a video game. You start out at level 0 and you develop the tools. You get some new superpowers, you upgrade them, you find some ruins in a dungeon, and you get stronger and stronger and can overcome tougher enemies. That's how I like looking at it, because I like video games.
I do too, and thank you so much for coming on to do this as well. I've been very excited and looking forward to this. For anyone that's still watching the video, the channel is Happy Living. There's a link in the description, and I've gone there. He's got some great stuff. I'd highly recommend it if you're struggling with depression or if you just need a pick-me-up. Again, thank you so much, my friend. I've really appreciated our time together, and it has been a wonderful interview.
Thank you very much, Exile. I had a lot of fun.
Well, I hope you guys enjoyed that interview. It's always good to hear about someone who's been able to deal with their own personal demons and overcome them like that. Again, his channel name is Happy Living, and it's right there in the description, as are the links to all the resources he talked about. This was a great interview. I really enjoyed doing this with him, and I hope you guys got as much insight into the world of depression as I was able to. Depression can really suck. It's very difficult to overcome, as you just heard, but it is beatable. It's not a death sentence. It is something that you can beat. So if you're currently struggling with it, I would highly suggest that you visit some of the resources that we discussed in the video. But remember, there is hope. There will always be a brighter tomorrow. You just have to push yourself through to see it. Thank you all so much for tuning in today. I truly appreciate all the support you guys have given the channel and all the growth that it's beginning to see. If you enjoyed the video, please feel free to hit that like button and subscribe so you can get more of your daily dose of Reddit Happy. Also, the channel is on Twitter and Instagram, and you can check out the links in the description below. Now you guys go out there, have a great day. I will see you all tomorrow. Until then, I'm Exile451. Stay beautiful, people.